Hi, I'm Dr. Hagmeyer, and if you're just tuning in, I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. If you have IBS or SIBO, perhaps you've started following a low FODMAP diet or even a gluten-free diet. And even with the best preparation and all the best intentions of following this diet, you are still finding yourself being full and bloated and perhaps even at times experiencing diarrhea and constipation and gas or some other kind of digestive stress. And if that's you, I want to introduce you to a couple common culprits that are often permissible on these diets, and they find themselves on these diets. And so today I want to share with you some information on some very important food additives that are being used in many of the so-called natural and health food stores. It poses a huge problem for people with GI problems and GI distress, and if so, today I thought I would share some information on the 5 most common gums or resins, if you will, that can cause GI distress. Right? You'll learn what they are. You'll find out where you find them, why they may not be belly friendly. Gums are, for the most part, they are indigestible polysaccharides. That means these are long chain sugars. And like anything else, these additives are finding themselves everywhere in our food supply, and even they're being found in cosmetics. More and more food manufacturers who are trying to corner the lot on the healthcare industry and the healthcare food industry are using these gums because, for the most part, they have some unique properties in that they're very desirable in improving the texture and the consistency and the thickness and the volume of these foods, as well as extending their shelf life. So I want to review with you these 5 gums and really where they come from. And so the first one is what we call Guar Gum. And I'm certain that if you are reading food labels, you've come across this one. Guar Gum comes from ground up guar beans, right? In animal studies that have been conducted to test the safety of Guar Gum have basically come to a conclusion that they are not carcinogenic, and because animal studies have showed no harm, even at very high doses, that this Guar Gum is now being studied in humans as a therapeutic tool for reducing things like blood sugar levels and cholesterol levels. Some studies have been shown that Guar Gum supplementation is very effective at reducing things like high blood sugar levels and high cholesterol levels, improving glycemic control. But unfortunately, these studies also report on the end of gastrointestinal things that they increase gas and they increase bloating and they increase abdominal pain. So something to be aware of. So while it's good for one thing, for those of us who suffer with GI issues, it's something that's not helping. All right. Now, another common gum that's being used is Locust Bean Gum, or carob. And this is a vegetable gum extract from the seeds of a carob tree. And these are trees that are found mostly in the Mediterranean region. And again, the same thing with this one. Another one is Mastic Gum. All right, this comes from the hardened sap of a tree, and it's often used with good success to treat infections like H. pylori. Unfortunately, some people who use Mastic Gum with hopes of improving their gut health find that bloating and pain and gas and cramping intensify substantially. All right, so that's something, again, you want to be aware of these. Another gum that you've been seeing that's just showing up all over the place is Xantham Gum. Right? This is a gum that can be synthetically made or it can be made through bacterial fermentation. And studies have shown that while it's safe in up to 15 grams of use per day, but again, like the gums that we've just mentioned, many people are having increased intestinal gas and cramping and bloating and diarrhea and so forth. And so again, if you're a person who has SIBO or you have IBS and you have those symptoms and they intensify for weeks, for a couple of weeks after you began introducing these new foods, it's something, again, to be on the lookout for. Now, the last gum I want to talk to you about is one that has really gained a lot of attention, and this is not in a good way. This is Carrageenan. Right? And this is virtually impossible to find a grocery store that doesn't sell products that include this as an additive. You can find it in organic yogurt. You can find it in coconut milk. You can find it in baby formula. You can find it in deli meat, things like that. Carrageenan, however, is really an extract. It really comes from red algae or edible seaweeds. And so while that may sound harmless, I would caution you not to think that so fast. In fact, when we start to look at some of the studies, we see that things like large intestinal ulceration is associated. We see things like insulin resistance. We see things like ulcerative colitis. We see immune suppression. We see even things like colon cancer. And the big one, of course, is intestinal inflammation. When it comes to Carrageenan, various sources claim that many individuals will experience these gastrointestinal symptoms that range from bloating to, again, irritable bowel syndrome to, of course, these severe inflammatory bowel diseases. Okay, so again, the good news is when you've eliminated these things, that those conditions have improved, right? So Carrageenan from a diet leads to just profound improvements in their gastrointestinal health when they're removed, right? In a recent study that I came across not that long ago, it was talking about gum reactivity, and they took 288 people, and they evaluated these people for food allergies. And what they did is they used both IgE and IgG as immune markers, right? And these are essentially lab biomarkers that we use to determine whether or not a person is having an immune system reaction to that particular food, if they have a food sensitivity. And what they found was that when we look at gums as a whole, the ones that we just talked about, what they found was that Carrageenan was hands down was the worst, followed by Mastic Gum, Locust Bean Gum or Carrageenan Gum, Xantham Gum, and then Guar Gum, right? So Guar Gum was the least problematic, and Carrageenan was the most problematic. As you can see here in this study from the Scientific American, they acknowledged how these gums and these additives can be just downright nasty to our GI tract, causing things like colitis and IBS and rheumatoid arthritis, and again, that colon cancer. Now, because 50% of grocery packed products actually contain these gums that we've been talking about, I really want to encourage you or your loved ones to start reading those labels, all right? So just a few reminders or closing points that I want to share with you about today's video. And number one is, if you've been following a low-fat MOP diet or a gluten-free diet or some other diet that allows these additives and you're still struggling, all right, you might be experiencing food or chemical sensitivities or reactions. That could be one of the things that's sabotaging your progress. So while you're doing everything right, you're following this diet to the T, there may be an immune reaction that without testing you can't identify. All right. Number two, again, this is just a reminder. Please read those labels, right? Just because someone else was able to eat it, that does not mean that you were able to eat it, right? Don't necessarily think that, well, we've heard this saying before, right? One man's food is another man's poison. I'll leave it there. Number three, right? While it comes to these gums, some might argue that if you're healthy, that you can get away with eating these. However, for the purpose of today's video, and for those who are struggling with GI issues, and really chronic GI issues, maybe you have Crohn's, maybe you have ulcerative colitis, maybe you have irritable bowel syndrome, or you have SIBO, I strongly advise against using these, and especially would advise against using Carrageenan. Okay. Number four, get food sensitivity testing or food allergy testing. You may need to have both. These are different. Food allergy testing versus food sensitivity testing. Different parts of the immune system, different kinds of markers to be run. But nevertheless, I highly, highly recommend this if you have an ongoing GI issue that's just not getting any better, right? My thought is why take a chance? Why leave this open to chance when you can easily test something and start narrowing out those areas of gray, right? These gums may be causing a low-grade inflammatory response in your gut. We know that anytime we inflame the gut, it's going to have a systemic impact on so many other areas of our body. Now, another thing that's worth considering is every day more and more research is showing the connection between certain foods we eat and how they trigger autoimmune diseases, right? It's not just gluten that's causing these problems anymore, right? So again, just think about that. Now, I want to show you one more thing that I want to show you before we close this video is I want to show you some testing of a patient that I worked with a few years ago who I was able to help get her into remission, and she had Crohn's disease. And so we ran a few different kinds of tests that her previous doctors had failed to run, and what we found was that she was sensitive to 3 different kinds of gums, and you can see those here in the red and the yellow region of this test. Anything that shows up in the red and yellow, these are basically signs, markers indicating you should not be eating these foods. And again, these gums were causing this low-grade irritant, this inflammatory reaction in her body. So again, testing can be very helpful in cases like this. So closing point number 5 is really, as I mentioned earlier, remember that gum reactivity can be a very, very serious problem for those people who are gluten sensitive, or for those people who have celiac disease or some other kind of autoimmune disease. So there you go. I hope you liked today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, comment below, share today's video with someone who might be struggling. And until next time, I'm Dr. Hagmeyer, and we'll see you soon. Take care.